Hi there, my name is Milagros Miceli and this is the video presentation of the Data-Production Dispositif, a paper co-authored with Julian Posada, who is also co-presenting with me today. In this paper, we studied outsourced data work for machine learning, which we define as the labor involved in the collection, curation, classification, labeling, and verification of data. What we present in this paper is an analysis of critical aspects that enable specific discourses to be produced and reproduced in and through data work. And of course, these discourses get encoded in machine learning data sets and in machine learning systems, and this is why we believe that this type of analysis is crucial. We lean on Foucault's notion of dispositif and apply the method of dispositif analysis. The concept of dispositif describes an ensemble of elements that shape each other and work as a whole to produce knowledge power through their interplay. Three types of elements constitute dispositifs. They are first linguistically performed practices, that is, what is said, thought, and written, or better said, what we allow ourselves to think, say, and write. Second, practices that are not linguistically performed, that is, what is done, and especially how it's done. And third, dispositifs materializations in terms of artifacts or objects that play a specific role within the dispositif and support the dispositif's mission. As Foucault argues, a dispositif emerges as a response to an urgent need. What we argue with Julian on the paper is that the data production dispositif responds to the voracious demand for more, cheap, and increasingly differentiated data to feed the growing machine learning industry. Its constitutive elements are designed to fulfill this need. And those elements are also three, and they are first, the predefined truth values encoded in data work instructions, second, the work practices and social positions of data workers, and third, the materializations such as systems and interfaces used by data workers to perform their tasks. As Foucault puts it, the ultimate goal of a dispositif is to shape subjectivities and to form subjects. As our findings show, the data production dispositif demands and creates a specific type of worker that is kept apart from the rest of the machine learning production chain and therefore alienated. Data workers who are recruited in impoverished areas of the world, often with the promise of bringing jobs to marginalized populations, but who work under very precarious labor conditions and are offered almost no opportunities to ascend socially or professionally. Finally, these are workers who are trained to obey requesters and not question tasks, and who are constantly reminded of the dangers of non-compliance. Our analysis focuses on Latin America. We conducted fieldwork at 3 crowdsourcing platforms that are active in Venezuela and 1 business process outsourcing company dedicated and specialized in this type of data work that is located in Argentina. The dispositif analysis method allowed us to analyze and combine the insights obtained by different data, including more than 200 data work instruction documents that we analyzed, 55 interviews with data workers, managers, and requesters, and finally also observations conducted at both fieldwork sites in Venezuela and Argentina, including the analysis and the observation of work interfaces used to perform data work.
In this paper, we aim at addressing 3 research questions. First, what are the discourses present in task instructions that were provided to outsource data workers? Second, how do the workers, managers, and requesters interact with each other and with instruction documents to produce data? And third, what artifacts support the observance of instructions and what kind of work do they perform? Regarding the discourses present in instructions, we found that these carry meanings according to the worldviews of requesters and not necessarily those of workers. For example, in this case of human classification, in terms of racial categories, the requesters use a US-centered view to construct the taxonomies that were presented to workers. We found that discourses also reinforce obedience by reminding workers of the consequences of dissenting from these classifications. In this example, the requesters say, and I quote, "Judges providing low-quality responses will be banned and not paid," end quote. In this case, quality for the requester means doing exactly what they want. Second, in terms of social relations involved in data production, we found that the precarious situation in which many workers find themselves reinforces their obedience to their employers. For example, in the quote above, the worker tells us that because they don't have insurance, they depend on the income from the platform in this case, and since they work for peace, stopping from work could negatively impact their access to healthcare, reinforces these relationships of obedience. In addition, we also found instances of worker solidarity and cooperation, especially on social media. Because there is less presence of their employers, workers feel free to share concerns and tips to be able to earn higher income through their work. Finally, in terms of artifacts that support the data production dispositif, we found that interfaces reinforce productivity without questioning the content of the instructions. For example, we find that interfaces gave room for feedback or to alert the requester of a bug of a problem with the project in very rare occasions. Instead, tools to inform the worker of their time spent per task and the pay were featured in all instances that we observed. We conclude this paper with a call to see dignified work as a requirement for data quality instead of a cost for its production. By reducing alienation, workers can understand the data production process and provide better responses for their projects. Finding precarious work should also be a requirement for ethical AI systems. The focus should not only be on the deployment of the technology, but we also should be mindful of how it is created. There cannot be ethical AI without respect for labor rights. After all, dignified work is a basic human right. And finally, instead of keeping workers outside of the production process and constantly surveil to control them, their insights and feedback can allow requesters to improve their project and spot errors much faster. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation, and we look forward to hearing any comments that you have on this project. Thank you.